Welcome to this session on data altruism and open academic resource. As academics and researchers, we have a responsibility to share digital resource with the public, not only to inform citizens and policymakers, but also to foster fair and sustainable innovation. The central question of today's session is how we can create and maintain data commons that are open, trustworthy, and ethically responsible. We will explore both the practical and conceptual challenges of open science, from privacy and regulatory issues to trust, sustainability, and the broader societal impact on shared digital resource. We are privileged today to have three distinguished speakers whose work exemplifies different facets of this mission. Each brings a unique perspective on how data altruism can be operationalized in research, software, and infrastructure, while ensuring the resources we create are both open and reliable. So, our first speaker is Roberto di Cosmo, a longtime advocate of free software and the founder of Software Heritage. Roberto will discuss how software as a public good can become a public risk if it is not properly preserved. Software Heritage collects and shares all publicly available source code at a planetary scale. Each artifact is made citable and verifiable through an intrinsic identifier, enabling reproducibility and trust in software-based research. His talk will cover the challenges of operating a universal archive, handling GDPR requests, takedowns, and the massive presence of unlicensed code. Legal and ethical tensions, how copyright restriction often limit software altruism, maintaining provenance, integrity, and accountability across multiple software repositories, and confronting the AI revolution and the fragility of modern digital infrastructure. So, maybe to introduce quickly Roberto, he is a full professor of computer science at University Paris Cité, currently on leave at INRIA to lead Software Heritage, a non-profit international initiative in partnership with UNESCO, unveiled in 2016, to build the Universal Software Source Code Archive. His research interests include functional programming, parallel and distributed programming, semantics of programming languages, type systems, rewriting, linear logic, software engineering, and analysis of large software collection. So, Roberto, the floor is yours, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for having me today. It's a pleasure to participate in this group, and I will try in 15 minutes to give you a little bit of an idea of what we are trying to do, what are the motivations, what are the challenges that we need to address. And I think I hope there will be subject for communication and discussion. Since this is a session on data altruism, I wanted to attract your attention to what has been happening with open source and free and open source software since maybe 30-something years. It is maybe the biggest example of data altruism that you actually see. Even if I cross it out data, because software is not data, it's much more than that, but it's everywhere today. It started as a marginal initiative in the software community, but today, if you look around in industry, for example, this is a report which is published yearly by a private company. You can have access to the document by looking at the QR code. It shows how you see the amount of open source software which is used worldwide in all the applications on which they perform security analysis. So this is not publicly available application, these are private application, which is proprietary application, but most of them contain hundreds and hundreds of open source software components. So what has been created, I forgot the definition of open source, but I suppose you know it. I mean, open source software, free software is software which is developed and distributed under a license that allows you to actually use it, distribute it with almost no restriction, and the ability to inspect it, modify, and distribute also the modified version. So all the opposite of what happened in the proprietary world. Now, this was a kind of a revolution 30 years ago. It is mainstream today in industry, and it is also mainstream in academia. So this is an excerpt of the French National Open Science Monitor that has been created by the Ministry of Research some 6 years ago. It was originally dedicated to monitoring the amount of publications which are on open access, and then slowly evolved to touch upon other objects of interest, like data set, and in particular this is on software. It works by analyzing all the publications with at least one French researcher and running machine learning model, not ChatGPT, or old traditional, old-style machine learning model on the PDF files to detect mention of use, creation, and sharing of software. And you see this shows you that not only it is all over the place in science, but it is all over the place in all disciplines. Okay, you can find it in law, you can find it in sociology, you can find it in all of these kinds of places. For example, in sociology, you do a lot of psychology, you do a lot of statistics, and people write our script to do analysis and statistics. There is a lot of software all over the place. And so it's really everywhere. Now, thanks to software that you will discover in a couple of slides, we are also able to give you an idea of how this grows around the planet and where it comes from. So the top image that you see here gives you the result of an effort that was done by Stefano Zacchiroli and Davide Rossi 2 or 3 years ago, looking into this giant archive that we built. They tried to identify the geographical origin of the contributors, and this is a result. Over 50 years, you see how Europe and the US were the driver of the software development for a long time, but today, this is a much more diverse constituency. You have more than 1/3 of the public available software today that doesn't come from Europe or from the US. The second image which is on the bottom left gives you the evolution of programming language in percentages, especially what I'm interested in the third one. This is what we see looking inside the archive. It is linear logarithmic scale that unfortunately we know now very well after the COVID episode. So this is a clear exponential. It shows that the original content that is created by developer doubles basically every 2 years. And this is a constant since the beginning of the 2000s. Over 20, 50, 25 years, it is always like this. Now, you will ask me, what about AI? I do not know. We will see in a couple of years the impact on whether the slope goes up or how does it change. Well, but the point is that while this is a most massive example of digital altruism that you can find around, it is still at risk. Okay, it is a commons which is really at risk. We live in a risky digital world for a bunch of reasons, and I will give you a few examples. The first one, or the fragility, is actually just the risk of losing or everything. Okay, so this is, for example, important for research, because when you do research, you want to reproduce research results, and if you cannot find the software that was associated with a particular article, there is little chance that you can reproduce it. But what happened, for example, in 2015, this was a first wake-up call. You had two massive code hosting platforms, Google Code and Gitorious, who were shut down at short notice, endangering almost 1 million repositories that were unplugged. Okay, so this is not one person that decides to remove a piece of software. This is a platform that says, okay, goodbye. We unplug the server and good luck finding your stuff. Okay, and then this created a lot of broken links in the web of knowledge, including my papers. I had article of mine that pointed to software that was there. And now if you look at the article, good luck finding the software. Okay. Now, the the point is this was not an exception. So 2019, Bitbucket, another platform, removed basically, they announced 250,000 repositories. Our account is more 350,000 repositories. Then in 2022, GitLab people, I mean, there's some document leaked, seemed to point to the fact that they could do remove projects which are non-active. But you know, a project, if there is no activity over 1 year, we just drop it. So you see, this is real digital fragility. And even us, I mean, in ERIA, we should be an expert in the digital world on how to handle software. We closed down an old technology forge, which was called the GForge. We announced to everybody that they needed to migrate to the new thing. And of course, the day the migration actually took place, and they unplugged the server, all the build system for the OCaml programming language, which was born in ERIA, broke down. And it was fixed, don't worry, of course, we noticed. But you see, things are very, very, very fragile. So we need to do something. And so we started doing something through Software Edge in 2015. Software Edge is an initiative launched by ERIA, now in partnership with UNESCO. In the QR code, you get a link to the annual report. It is today the largest open source code archive. So basically, we collect software from more than 5,000 different platforms, not just GitHub, but also all instances of GitLab, Bitbucket. We recovered what was lost. So we have Gitorious and Google Code and Bitbucket inside, etc. And you have some numbers there, which are, of course, not up to date because we keep growing the archive. Today, it is more than 400 million projects and more than 26 billion unique files. The idea is to have a single infrastructure that serves the needs of a bunch of different actors. I mean, it runs from cultural heritage, storing the history of computing, to industry that needs a knowledge base for actually knowing how to trust or not trust the components. Think about the Cyber Resilience Act that comes today. That's a key infrastructure for research, for an open science, but also for public administration. They need to show what they do with public money. Well, this is had been done by building a giant vacuum cleaner, let's say, that goes around the internet and collect from more than 5,000 platforms. I mean, GitHub, GitLab, Debian, Fedora, PyPI, NPM, all the package manager, etc. Everything that we can find, but we do not just collect it. We rebuild all the history of developing it to a single giant uniform data structure, which is technically a Merkle graph. It is a graph where each node has a cryptographic identifier that tracks the history of software development in human history over more than 70 years. This graph is, I think the numbers are here, it's 50 billion nodes, 800 billion edges, 2 petabytes and counting of storage. So it's probably the largest social graph that you can imagine to find publicly available on the planet. And I really say social graph because it is development history contains information about the developers, their practices, etc., etc. So you can see why I'm here. Okay, there are ethical issues when you do this kind of thing. It's in a unique infrastructure which is designed to be a single, open, non-profit shared infrastructure for all of humankind. It guarantees the availability of the software, so it will not disappear, the integrity of the software, the identifier, cryptographical identifier, so you are sure what you get. And through this graph, traceability. You can see a particular piece of software where it comes from. So fine, you could say, fantastic, thanks Roberto, you solved all the issue. Now we can go home because you have saved all the software. And not really. Actually, we are facing a lot of risks that we had to confront directly through this infrastructure. And so I'm listing a bunch of them for you. Indeed, there are a lot of risks and challenges. One is unexpected collateral damage from European regulation and directives that in principle had nothing to do with software. One was the EU copyright reform 2018-2019 that was intended to force a hyperscaler to pay some money to news venues, I mean the Monde, Die Welt, etc. in Europe or for YouTube, etc. and almost killed open source software development in Europe. It took us 1.5 years of fight against non-enemies to get an exception for software. The second one is GDPR. The General Data Protection Regulation is intended to protect us as human beings from violent, aggressive collection and reuse of personal data and information. So I signed, fantastic, super idea. But one of the non-expected consequences of GDPR is that now a lot of people, in particular people in developers, which are brilliant people, they think, now I can do whatever I want with anything I produce as soon as my name is in there. So I can tell you, since my name is in there, I want you to remove my name, or I want you to change my name, or I want you to remove the software, because since there is my name inside, it is up to me to decide if you can store it or not, which is not what GDPR was designed for at all. But it has a huge consequence on people that try to build archive like us in a responsible way. And so I would like to say a big thank here to the Comité National d'Éthique du Numérique that took the time to actually analyze the question from the ethical standpoint and provide an advice for us for what should we do, okay? What should we compensate or not. But it's not only this. There are new obligations. The Cyber Resilience Act is coming that imposes a lot of obligation on the quality of software they distribute. So it's no longer just data altruism or software altruism. Now it comes with strings attached. Okay, as soon as you share something, you are responsible for the quality of what you are sharing. You're responsible for cybersecurity. This was not expected. So I'm gifting you my software. Now you're telling me that I need to spend gazillions of dollars to have it qualified. I will just remove it from the internet. So it's a long discussion here. And last but not least, I mean, this is a short picture from the telescope. From software that uses the telescope. This is analysis of all the software publicly available to which 70-something academic institutions in France contribute. We look at the legal status of this software, and we found that over 3/4 of these projects have no license whatsoever. So you have people from INRIA, from CEA, from INSERM, from CNRS, from university, etc., contributing to software project where there is no license. What do we do with this? Because if you said, it's a tiny 3%, who cares? No, it is 3/4 of all the software which is publicly available out there. And most of the authors that contribute just want to share. They just didn't know they need to put a license, they do not care, etc. So we have a legal uncertainty, which is a big challenge for using with software commons, which is super important for us. And then, last but not least, we couldn't escape the general AI tidal wave. Okay, so we were hit by the tidal wave in 2023, when a lot of people asked us to provide them the full content of the archive to train new models. Put yourself a little bit in our place, in our feet. Okay, so we have been over 10 years in a long mission, very transparent. Everything we do is open in collaboration with UNESCO for all the countries of the world to collect the collective knowledge of mankind embedded in software source code. And now you have some companies coming and say, wow, fantastic work. Can you give it to us so we just build the next $1 billion company, etc.? Should I say yes? Should I say no? So it took some time to do this. And at the end, we decided that there is an advantage in having models built on top of software heritage because it democratizes the access to software. But we want to avoid full proprietarization of this knowledge. So these are the principles we came up with. We say we enter into discussion with entities of companies that accept to make available back, to give back to humankind the foundational model trained on top of software heritage. The foundational model, if you know, it's a raw model bit on top of it. It's not what you put in production, because then you need to do fine-tuning, etc. But the raw model, which is a compressed version of the knowledge, must be given back. Second, transparency. We want to know everything you use to train the model, and this is very easy because you just publish a list of cryptographic identifier. And third, and here this is more of an ethical than legal question, it is not clear in Europe or in the States whether I, as an author of software, can say I do not want a company to use my publicly available software to train a model. So let's say it seems to be clear that it will be lawful, okay? But to be on the safe side, we want people to set up some kind of opt-out mechanism to allow people to say they do not agree, okay, for example. Was it too much? Because if it is just to say this and then nobody plays the game, it's virtual signaling, very nice for us to feel good, but doesn't have any impact. The good news is that it actually worked. So finally we had a Hugging Face service now in NVIDIA that accepted to play the game. They signed an agreement that forces them to respect this principle. And they published last year a model which is called StarCoder 2. It was the best model open model for programming back then. And it shows you can build a good model by following all these principles that a bunch of people said was not possible, okay? But it is very hard to do. And now I know I am very over time, so I will... Okay, I will try to skip very quickly. So it is very hard. And what is hard? I mean, transparency is super easy. You just use identifier. This is the... now it is even an ISO standard, so it's very easy to do. We even set up a special working group inside the software area for companies that want to do this kind of thing. So the POS is a software used to do the training, reference it in such a way that it is fully transparent, etc. Fine. Opt-out and attribution is a nightmare. How do I find who is the real right owner or the owner of a piece of code that has been maybe replicated in 2,000 places in 20 different platforms, and that has maybe incorporated, or as we say technically, vendored in tons of bad library coming from other places? That's a nightmare, but it's not totally new. And then detecting the license is something that nobody did at the scale of such a data, or just saying this piece of software belongs or has been created by this person to give credit attribution is unprecedented as a challenge. So we want to address this. For this, we created launched a coordinated effort, which is called Code Commons. So the idea of Code Commons, since I do not have time, I will leave you here the slides, okay? So you can download it later, but it's basically a project funded by the French government under the France 2030 framework, with many, many people working together to try to find a way to have you use the data only once, to qualify it only once, to have the transparency done, and to have a way of attributing what a model produces to specific entities or authors by comparing with the content of the archive used as a data structure. You can go to codecommons.org, you will find a lot of information. Now, technically, I will skip also this. Technically, it's a lot of work. I mean, this is what we are trying to do now. But in principle, the idea is to have a single point where people can come to select a specified data set extracted from archive. For example, give me all the projects that are under a GPL license that are written in Rust or Python that are used in molecular biology, which are well maintained today, do not have vulnerabilities, so this way. And then on the other side, this model produces this particular result. Is it very similar to something in the archive? Can you tell me to what? So not an easy thing to do. I will let you hear this. 1 year after launching the project, this is more relevant than ever. So we have other companies that decided to play the game. IBM, Infosys signed the same agreement. So you see, slowly, with these 3 little principles, we are tilting the field in AI for software towards a more transparent, more responsible, more human-centered, would say, approach than what was possible before. And let me finish with this thing. Again, these licenses It's a big issue what we do with this. And about preferences, how do we allow authors to say what they want about their software? There are working groups active here. I would encourage anybody here interested in software or competent in software to join this kind of working group to make sure the kind of preferences attached to this content are compatible to what we need in software. And then I finish with the last slide, which is more general, not only ethics. This is another picture from this archive. The big blue part that you see here and the orange part are US-based code hosting platform. Okay, so GitHub and GitLab. So over 3/4 of the software to which our academic institution contribute is hosted and developed on a platform which are not under European control. I have no problem, it's super fine, but from a strategic autonomy point of view, it would be nice to ensure that we have a backup and that we can recover if by any chance in a given moment of time the link is cut. Okay, and so we urge everybody to come and talk to us, and don't be shy, come and talk to me. We need to launch an initiative at European level, wake up Europe a little bit, about the need to do this urgently now, and the fact that we have the key layer, which is Software Edge, already ready. Thank you for giving me a couple of minutes more. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Many thanks, Roberto, for this insightful and very dense presentation.